And here we have the rare Anatospongia, distinct from the common bathtub variant. Just kidding. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of biological classification.
Okay, so welcome back, guys. This is the third video of our series. In this video, we'll be talking about different types of classification systems. If you remember in the last lecture, we talked about various attempts. We talked about history of classification, and we talked about the classification systems given by Aristotle, given by Theophrastus, given by Ernest Haeckel, and finally, we talked about the classification system given by Karl Voss, the 3-domain and 6-kingdom classification. However, in this video, we'll be discussing how those classification attempts have been classified itself. Means we have different types of classification systems based on what kind of characters and how many characters they utilize to classify the organisms into groups. Classification is the arrangement of organisms into groups, and those groups are in turn included or classified in higher inclusive groups. That means the classification systems that we have are inclusive in nature. We will be discussing this inclusive nature of classification when we will discuss the linear hierarchical system. Right now, before we move on, let's have a quick look at taxonomy versus systematics again. We said that systematics is a broader discipline and it includes taxonomy. In taxonomy, we study classification, we study identification, and we study nomenclature. Nomenclature, we know, is the naming system that by which we name the organisms. We'll be discussing this, especially the binomial nomenclature, the history of it, and how this nomenclature is practiced. And point is, taxonomy is the subdiscipline of systematics, which the systematic studies relationship between organisms and between the organisms and the environment, which includes this study of evolution, phylogeny, and also taxonomy. Okay, so let's move forward. We have 3 kinds of classification systems. Let me make it a bit bigger. Okay, so we have 3 kinds of classification systems. The first one being artificial classification system, second is natural classification system, and finally we have phylogenetic classification systems. The artificial classification systems are those which are based on a few superficial observable traits, morphological traits. Okay, so these were the first early classification attempts that we studied. For example, we talked about, Aristotle's two-kingdom system. We talked about Theophrastus classification of plants into shrubs, herbs, and all. And finally, we also talked about Linnaeus 2-kingdom classification system. Okay, and in case of natural classification system, we will be discussing about Bentham and Hooker's classification system. This Bentham and Hooker's classification system is one of the complete natural systems that is there. And finally, we will move on to the phylogenetic classification systems, which are based on evolutionary relationships between the organisms. So starting with the first one, we will be talking about classification, this artificial classification system of Theophrastus. Okay, so Theophrastus, who is known as father of botany, as it is written here, okay, and father of biology is Aristotle, and Aristotle is also called the father of zoology. So this Theophrastus classified plants into trees, shrubs, and undershrubs and herbs. Undershrubs are also called subshrubs. Okay, so if you look at trees are those plants which have woody stem and single trunk. For example, olive tree, we have walnut tree, all other like fig tree. These are all trees. And then another group is of shrubs. Shrubs, for example, blackberry bush, Christus thorn. These are woody plants, but have many branches arising from the root, like this. Suppose this is the base, this is the ground, and you have many wooden branches arising like this. Okay, they are woody, but arising from the base. These are shrubs. Then you have subshrubs, which are smaller woody stems they have, and they branch from the base, similar to the shrubs. But in most of these subshrubs, the upper part, the basal part is woody, and the upper part is herbaceous. Okay, and they are called subshrubs. For example, savory, you have rue, you have, and finally you have herbs, which are there is no woody system. These are green, soft stemmed plants, and they die back every year. Okay, so what is the criteria here? The criteria is the nature of the stem, whether the stem is woody or not. And the other criteria is whether the plant has a single trunk or single stem coming from the base, or whether there are many stems coming from the base. So these are the two criteria that were used by Theophrastus, and he published this classification system in a book called Historia Plantarum. Historia Plantarum. Okay. So after Theophrastus, there have been many other approaches regarding classification. For example, especially regarding to the medicinal values of the plants. But it was Carl Linnaeus who gave us the first complete artificial system. Carl Linnaeus, who is also referred to as father of taxonomy. Carl Linnaeus system of classification. This is the most complete artificial system ever made. Okay, so this Carl Linnaeus, he classified 7,300 plant species, and he classified these plant species based on number, okay, form, and size of stamens. Stamens is the male reproductive part of a flower. Male reproductive part of a flower. Okay, so he used this stamen characteristics to classify these plants into various groups, various families. And since this classification system is based on the reproductive part of a flower, it is also called as sexual system of classification. And this Carl Linnaeus published this classification system in the book Species Plantarum in 1735 and 1753. Carl Linnaeus also gave us the hierarchical system of classification. Hierarchical system of classification that we'll be discussing. You may be knowing that there is kingdom, phylum, okay, division, class, order, family, genus, and species. This is the hierarchical system that was given by Linnaeus. And it is due to these reasons Carl Linnaeus is also referred to as father of taxonomy. Even though this system is pretty easy, it is based on few characteristics, but there are some demerits to it. Like it groups together unrelated plants. Okay, so there are many groups where there are different kinds of plants. They are kept together in the same groups. And then it also separates related species from one another. That means if there are two related species, they are placed in different groups. And it also is not based on phylogenetic characteristics. So there was no concept of evolution at that time. So it is not based on phylogenetic characteristics. These are some of the main. And yes, there is one more thing. It is based on this classification system. This artificial classification system is based on dissimilarity rather than similarity. So these were the earlier attempts of classifying plants, classifying organisms, and have been called artificial systems because they use few morphological characteristics. And one of the common features of these artificial systems is that they select characters a priori, which means they first select the character and then they describe the specimen, then they describe the plant species and see whether those plant species have those characteristics or not, and then classify them accordingly. Okay, this is in contrast with the natural systems where the characters are selected a posteriori, means that they first study the organisms, they then take the characters only after they study the organisms and see which plants share more characteristics, which characters are correlated with each other, and then they group the plants accordingly. Okay, so this is one of the important differences between natural systems and artificial systems. Okay, so now we move ahead to discuss natural system of classifications. Okay, so if you define a natural system of classification, we say that a natural system of classification is based upon states of several to many characters selected a posteriori for their value positively correlating with states of other characters to form a hierarchical structure of groups of ranks containing high information content and are predictive. What does it mean? It means that a natural system is one which is based on many characters, or we can say overall characters of organisms. Overall characters of organisms. And these characters are selected a posteriori that we discussed. And these characters are then correlated with each other, means which characters are present together and which characters are separated, and then they use this correlation, the a posterior nature of the selection, for classifying the organisms. And these organisms are then classified into various groups which are inclusive in nature, where you have many species which are grouped. Okay, many species are grouped together in a single genus, and many genera are grouped together in a single family, and so on. That is the inclusive nature of classification. So the characters selected here are weighted by their selection, and the employment over those not selected is done intuitively by the taxonomist. That means those characters which are selected, they are done by the taxonomists. Which characters should be, should we use for classification? We should be given weightage. It is done by the guesswork, by the intuition of the taxonomists. Okay, a natural system is referred to as polythetic. A natural system is a polythetic system, means that it places organisms, it places plants together that have greatest number of shared features, and no single feature is essential to the group membership. That means places organisms together based upon greatest number of shared features, and no single feature is essential to group membership. So what does this mean? It means that if you have species A which has a particular character like character 1, and there is a group already classified having this character, say all the group members have this character 1, but this A organism having the character 1 does not mean that this A will be placed in this group. Say this is group B. Okay, so having a single feature does not guarantee a group membership. Okay, so this is the polythetic nature of natural systems. While as in case of artificial systems, those artificial systems are referred to as monothetic. Monothetic means a group member should have at least a particular character, a particular feature, which makes them eligible for that group membership. So this is also a difference between artificial and natural systems. There are two important natural systems. One is of Decondole system, and second is of Bentham and Hooker. Decondole system and Bentham and Hooker. If you remember, Decondole gave us the term taxonomy. Okay, and usually in most of the syllabuses, most of the books, this Bentham and Hooker system is usually discussed, and we will go with this natural system of Bentham and Hooker, which is also used in still used in many parts of the world, especially if we talk about Indian herbaria. This Bentham and Hooker is used for the arrangement of the organisms, for the arrangement of the specimens in their herbaria. I think we will stop here today. In the next video, we'll be talking about Bentham and Hooker's system of classification in detail. And if you liked this video, kindly do share, subscribe, and like. I will see you in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.
Artificial or natural, classification is the key to understanding the complex relationships that define our existence.
If you like this video, hit that subscribe button. Peace out.